All right, so the lesson today is 5.3, 5.4. It's rate of change and slope. So it's a combination lesson. It covers both 5.3 and 5.4, so the introduction of slope, and really we use the word of rate of change at the beginning, but then again we use slope. Okay, so the thing I want us to have right off the bat, we should have gotten in our notes today in class, but is the slope formula. It is m equals y2 minus y1 over top of x2 minus x1. Okay, and again, what this references is using our coordinate points to be able to find our slope. So if I make up some coordinate points here and say -4 and 3, and I say 6 and 2, this first set of coordinate points right here, they're the first ones, so we label it x1 and y1, because again, we have our x and our y, and then since this one's our second set of coordinate points, it'd be x2 and y2. All right, so let's dive into finding some slope. So here's our graph. Now, if it's already on a graph, we don't need to use our slope formula. I'm basically going to go from the dot they gave me here to the dot they gave me here. Okay, so I'm thinking, how much am I rising? 1, 2, and then how much am I running? 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope, I rose 2 and I ran 4. Now that fraction simplifies to a half. So my slope is a half. So if I went back to this point and only went up 1 and went over 2, yep, there's a coordinate point. Went up 1 and over 2, there's our coordinate point. So yes, it all works on there. If I look at my second graph, again, I've got 2 coordinate points right here. This time it looks like I have a negative slope because I'm going to be going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots. I'm going down 6, so make that negative. And then I'm running 1, 2. So again, I fell 6 and I ran 2. Now that fraction, -6 divided by 2, gives me -3 for my slope. And again, if I double check that, if I go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1, yep, there's my dot right there. Everything matches. All right, so some quick things. I just pulled this picture from the textbook to talk about horizontal and vertical lines. So as a reminder right here, if I look at this graph, and again, here's my coordinate point, here's my coordinate point. If I look, there's no place for me to rise, so that'd be 0. Okay, but if I run, I would run 1, 2, 3, and 4 spots. Well, hopefully you recognize that 0 divided by anything equals 0. Okay, and that's the work that they were showing right down here, that we have a slope of 0 because we didn't rise anything and then we ran 4, but 0 divided by anything is 0. If I look at the second example right here, this time if I look at those dots, I am rising 2, but I'm not running to the right anywhere, so over top of 0. And what we have to be careful of is when 0 is in the bottom of a fraction, you can't do that. Your calculator will say error if you try to plug it in. So that's not our slope. Our slope is actually written as undefined. Undefined. Okay? So again, 2 more examples down below. If I look at this A1, this line is vertical, so it looks like I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but then I ran 0. Okay, as soon as that 0 is on the bottom, we write undefined for our slope. Versus on our second example, to go from the dot to the dot, it looks like I am not rising anything, so 0. Over top, I'm running 1, 2, 3, 4. 0 divided by 4 is 0 for my slope. Okay. Also from the textbook, I pulled this picture just reminding us that positive slopes go up. Okay, positive slopes are going up like you're reading a book. Negative slopes are going down. Like we just talked about, a nice horizontal line like so is going to have a slope of 0 versus our vertical line right here would be having a slope that is undefined. Okay, so it's just some quick reminders on there. All right, so let's dive into actually using our coordinate points and finding our slopes on here. Okay, so let me write my other coordinate point that I have, which was -1, 2. All right, so if I am finding the slope, I'm going to write my slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over top of x2 minus x1. All right, I'm going to label these. This is my x1, my y1, because it's the first set of coordinate points. I have my x2, and I have my y2, my second set of coordinate points, okay? And on here, what we have to be able to talk about is finding the slope. So if I plug stuff in, I would have 2 minus -2 over top of -1 minus 4. So being super careful on the top, since you're subtracting a negative right here, that'd be like adding. So I have 2 plus 2, which gives me 4. And on the bottom, I have -1 minus 4, which gives me -5. There's my slope. Okay. Now, typically we associate the negative sign with the top, so it'd be -4/5, because if we were to graph this, that means I would fall 4 and I'd run to the right 5. So just sort of keep that in mind. The negative sign, even though it fell on the bottom, when we write it for our final answer and try to graph it later, we're going to want to associate it with the top number. Okay. All right, let's try our second example. We've got our x1. We've got our y1. We've got our x2 and our y2. So if I plug it in, I would have -4 minus -7 over top of 6 minus 5. All right, being careful when you subtract a negative, that's like adding. So on the top, -4 plus 7 gives me 3. And on the bottom, 6 minus 5 gives me 1. That fraction 3 divided by 1 simplifies to 3. Okay. Last thing we need to talk about today is sometimes they'll give you a bunch of table values on here and they'll say, hey, find the slope. Okay, so we're still using our slope formula, which again I'll write down, y2 minus y1 over top of x2 minus x1. Okay, all right, so they gave us basically 1, 2, 3, 4 different sets of points, but we only need 2 when we use our slope formula. So I'm sort of just going to cross out those last ones just because they're the last ones, no particular other reason. And I'm just going to use these guys. Okay, so this would be like my first set of coordinate points, and this would be my second. So when I plug it into my equation, that would make it 5 minus 1 over top of 2 minus 0. 5 minus 1 is 4, 2 minus 0 is 2, and then that fraction 4 divided by 2 simplifies to 2. All right. Okay, our last one, again, they gave you 4 different sets of coordinate points. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't need all 4, so I'm just going to cross out the last 2 because they're at the end, okay? And I'm only going to use my first 2, and I'm going to plug them into my equation. So my y2 is 0, minus my y1 is 3. Over top of my x2 is 0, minus my x1, which was -2. Again, be careful when you subtract a negative that this turns to a plus. Okay, so 0 minus 3 gives me -3. And on the bottom, 0 plus 2 is 2. So my slope is -3/2.